So anyway, we're going to start here. What I'm going to talk about today is engines. We only have 2 hours to cover everything about engines that you need to know. So obviously, we can't get very far. If you have questions on anything, it'd be great. Then I could help you out. Otherwise, we're going to go through some things. What I want to do out here is just go through some troubleshooting techniques. We're going to watch a film, and the film is going to go through in-field troubleshooting of 2-cycle products. And I just want to show you 1 or 2 techniques that are pretty helpful if you're out there and you're trying to get something to start and it won't start. And how do you kind of go one direction or the other. And so we're going to start over here with this rototiller. You got a rototiller, you've been pulling on it for a while, you want to know, it won't start. And this could be one of several problems. And so you have to figure out is this problem electrical or is this problem fuel? And basically what I'm going to show you is how to separate the two. And a real simple thing that we're going to use. And the little tool that we're going to use and we use around here all the time is a syringe. With a syringe I can actually draw some fuel out of a tank and I can meter it into the carburetor and pull a rope. If it starts, I can continue to meter it in. If for some reason this engine backfires and it blows a flame out the carburetor, which is a very common thing, it will not blow up the syringe because in order to have an explosion there has to be oxygen. And so if I take a can and I'm pouring gas into here and it backfires, it's going to blow up, it's going to go into the can, it's going to blow up in the can, and I'm going to get injured. And so this is a tool that you can use that will never injure you. The only problem with using a syringe is they don't last very long. They don't hold up very well under fuel. And so they do what I'm doing here, which is they come apart. And so you have to have a pretty good supply. They last for a little while, a couple of weeks if you're using it on a regular basis. But they do tend to get soft and then you can't get them to work. So I'm going to try to get fuel in this one again. If I'm going to do this, I've got to take the air cleaner off. If I take the air cleaner off, this one has a piece of foam in it and it has paper. What's the purpose of the foam that's in this one? What's the purpose of the foam? This is a pre-cleaner. It takes out the big particles. It's going to make this one last longer. And so here's an example of one pretty cheap lawnmower or a rototiller, but it works in a dusty conditions. In such a dusty condition, we want to be able to extend the paper filter, so they put a foam in there. If this gets old and you throw it away, it's going to cause this one to plug up. So we want to make sure we put it back in when we're done. When I have it off, one thing I'm going to look for is to make sure that my choke is actually opening and closing. So I can look directly in here, I can see the choke. If I'm moving my throttle plate and I hit the choke position, does the choke work? In this case, if I think it's on this lever, the choke is now moving, that's not controlling my choke. A choke is designed to overfuel a gas engine so that it starts. By overfueling an over-rich mixture, it allows it to start. There are particular engines. The Kawasaki that's behind you on that John Deere is an example of an engine that if you don't choke it, it won't start. You can crank and crank and crank forever. You go into choke, it over-richens it and fires. Today's engines have been designed to where they put the minimal amount of fuel in there. And because the carburetors are tuned and leaned out so much that they have to get choked. So this particular one, the choke is on the side. So I have to find the lever that controls it. I'm going to squirt some fuel in here. Basically what I'm doing is I'm becoming the metering valve of the carburetor. So when I pull on it, hopefully it'll start. So as long as I'm adding fuel, it's running. In some cases, if I had a full tank, that amount of fuel would have been enough to get that rubber diaphragm lubricated enough and keeps it running. The other option is to sit here and pull and pull and pull and pull. I pulled it one time and started it up. Versus 12 or 15 pulls, which is going to wear the rope out, all I did is I gave it a jump start, boost. like in your car, if you have a carburetor in your car and you push the accelerator, you're pushing an accelerator pump that squirts a volume of fuel into the intake. That's what I just did there.
Yeah, but like on a lawnmower, you pump it, is that kind of what you were doing?
On a lawnmower that has a button, here's a chainsaw. Here's a chainsaw with a rubber like you're talking about. And that's what this is doing, is priming the system and getting it. Now why they're going to this is so that you don't have to pull the rope 100 times to prime it. I'm going to prime this thing so that when I pull it the first time, it starts.
Pulling the rope a bunch of times is like priming it.
What you're doing is you're drawing air and you're making the fuel pump work, and it's slowly drawing it up the tube. I have to put it in this particular machine. It draws fuel up through a fuel pump, and it goes out the fuel pump into a little teeny cup. Once it fills the cup, then it will drop a second tube and goes into the engine. So I have to draw it up the tube, through the fuel pump, into the little cap, up the next tube, and over and into the engine. It's going to take me probably 8 pulls to prime that whole system. By doing this, I'm going to allow the engine, which is turning a lot faster than I'm pulling, to prime the system. And it just speeds up the process. And if it has a really weak fuel pump, it may be the difference between getting it to start and not getting it to start. Because that speed is going to help make that diaphragm work better. And so it's just one of those cheap, quick tools. If it blows up, you know, I'm going to have a flame come out here and it could singe my eyebrows or something, but it's not going to blow this up. If I get a bunch of fuel on the outside, it's going to burn that, so getting it on my hands would probably be a very bad thing. But usually, unless this thing comes apart all the time, you usually don't get it in your hand. You just reach in, and I could even take the cap off of here, reach in and pull fuel out of this tank, squirt it in here, and start it up. So it's just a troubleshooting technique that'll make your life easier. And then make sure that I put the air cleaner back on.